Welcome to r/ProRevenge. This is the story of someone getting back at someone with ProRevenge after being wronged. The first story is, Tarnish my honor? How about no money or job? Names, places, and dates have all been changed to conceal people's identity in this event. Context. Let me set the scene first. I had joined the army direct from high school for my colonial friends and had a great time. However, my contract was up and I had decided that I really wanted to go back into further education and redo my high school, as I failed everything, as I was so focused on joining the army at the time, with the intention on going to university. So with that in mind, I did not sign on for another contract with the army I just left. Now, it's a bit depressing being in my early 20s, ex-serving soldier and living at home with his mother, but that's the way it had to be, as the money I had saved from the army was going directly towards my higher education, not to mention that I spent most of my time applying to colleges, trying to get on a course. I needed a part-time job. It's not that I was not applying for jobs the minute I was back at my mom's house. I just spent more time trying to get onto a course. It was just that within 6 months, I was not even getting any interviews. My friends and family all said it's more than likely being an ex-soldier, and the social climate at the time in Europe would have been against me getting a job. Then out of nowhere, I get a phone call from awesome area boss, from a low-tier model retail company. From now on, she'll be called AAB. I go to the interview and get on very well with AAB. AAB tells me the position is what they call key timers, which in a nutshell meant weekend staff and public holidays, which was fine with me as my goal was my education. The pay was okay. I could not save anything, but it would keep me afloat as it were, and to be honest, from what I understood about the company, it was quite relaxed work. AAB offers me the job on the spot, to which I was over the moon with. He asked me to start the following week. The following week comes around, and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed I get to the shop. AAB introduces me to Matt, our opposing force in this story. The opposing force. Matt, not real name of course, is in his late 30s and has only ever worked at this model shop. Matt seemed like a nice guy, a little unhygienic with his dirty work uniform, but maybe that's just me with uniforms. In hindsight, he was only ever nice to me when AAB was on site, and sadly, AAB had like 6 to 9 shops to look after, so this meant our tiny little shop was not a priority for him, unlike the megastore in the capital city that was making the big money. Matt took his job with a pinch of salt, often being lazy with his duties and bashing our customers and their kids, not to mention making fun of my military background, belittled me in front of customers. I took this at first as banter. You have to understand I thought what went on in the military would more than likely move over to civilian life, and just assumed that this was a fact of life. Then I started to notice a pattern, that this was emotional bullying. There's no way he could physically bully me, as I was bigger than him, and physically fit, and to some extent had some training. He knew this, and thus emotional bullying was his weapon of choice. When ABB was not there, he would often order me, his words not mine, to do jobs he could not be bothered doing, such as set up sale displays. He would often tell me he was higher ranking than me, and that with my background I should do as he says. He was not higher than me, he was just a full-time employee at the store, same pay scale, just did more hours than me. I did everything he said, for a few reasons. My first priority was I needed to keep this job, and I had 3 to 4 month trial period, so I needed to keep in everyone's good books to keep this job. He gave me jobs like cleaning the toilet, which has never been cleaned in years, as I was used to this type of job. He would ask me to do big tasks, like inventory stock 5 minutes before closing the store, while he went out drinking with his mates over the road at a bar, as apparently, head office had asked me for the stock take and not him. Although a little store, doing stock takes hours. Yes, this was paid work. For context, as I was new to the area, I did not have any real friends anyway, as my mother was divorced while I was in the army and separated from my stepdad and living in the new area. So at that time, I did not complain, and I also believed that they had asked me to do such things. I never questioned authority. Something I later had to learn to do. The wreck. Anyway, the trial period passes by really quickly, and AAB asks me in for a post-trial interview. He sits me down and starts to explain this is serious, and explains if I'm okay with it, anything I say now will be recorded. I just assumed that this was part and parcel of what happens in these types of interviews and agree. AAB goes on to explain that money and stock are missing on the days that I was working. I was stunned, even speechless. I started to panic, and off the bat told the AAB that I had never stolen anything. Although I liked working for the company, I don't paint or play with models, and with the money gone, I told him honestly I had no idea about this, and was confused by all this. AAB then thanks me for attending the interview, and stops recording the conversation, pen and paper recording. AAB then states that I can't prove anything, so even if I had stolen anything, nothing could be proven that you had done it. I was red with anger by this time, with the implication that people thought I was stealing, but kept my mouth shut, as I've learned when I was in the army, never open your mouth to a senior rank when angry. 3 days cleaning a parade square with a butter knife for that life lesson, but that's another story. ABB then says that I passed my initial trial period and have moved on to being an employee. This shocked me even more. I thought I was going to be fired there and then. ABB then said he believed me that I did not take anything, but had to investigate any accusation made by another member of staff, and that it could be an input problem with the machines we use for stock and the till system we use for payment, but he needed to ask all staff that work these days. ABB, being a full-on dude, just undertoned what happened. Matt just told management that I was stealing. Okay, Matt, the game is on. The calm before the storm. Matt was later asked to leave the company, as his constant bashing of our customers and their kids one day led to head office getting to many complaints from customers about Matt. AAB then came to the office to fill in for a full-timer until someone was employed. Me and AAB get on really well and worked well together. I filled AAB in on the finer details on working with Matt, to which apparently he knew what was going on, but could not move on anything until I complained about it, to which I never did, thinking this was a normal way of working life to AAB, surprised, but could also understand coming from my sort of background. Matt had made it very clear to AAB that he did not want anyone else working in the same store as him before I got hired, but as the store was growing, he needed help, and so my position was made, and the rest is history. AAB told me that Matt had tried to get me fired for months, saying that I turned up to work late, drank beer before starting a shift, and that I'm possibly on drugs. The worst was that he suggested that I was also close to the kids that come into the store. AAB backed me 100% to the company directors and said these are false accusations. This is why he's awesome area boss. Into the breach, my friends. Years later, I see Matt working as an estate agent for a local firm. Matt is wearing a full-on suit, SH and shoes, driving a company car looking pro. I was in my final year of my course, but had left the model store I worked at as it was closed down. I got a part-time job working at an internet cafe, which funny enough was right next to Matt's new estate agent firm. He even came into the cafe telling me, "This is all you must be good for, and he earns more money than my education is worth." So it seems like he's out for me, still for some unknown reason. Maybe he's not happy with himself, or very insecure. I could have completely shut him down physically again, but it would only ever end up me being in jail, and not him, so there was no point in it. I just verbally told him if he carries on that a smack in the mouth would be the least of his worries. He leaves the internet cafe. A woman comes over to me, who was using one of our computers, and asks what that was all about. I said that he and I go way back, and he holds some hostility towards me. She then introduces herself as one of his customers, and is in the final process of buying a house from him. Not only this, but she has recommended him to all of her friends, who are looking to sell their houses. Contact effing front. All I say is that she should be very careful, as I know him to be very dishonest. So much so that when we worked together, he was let go because of some very shady actions, but did not give her full details. She then divulges all this information, how her husband did not like him, but she thought he was okay to buy a house from, which Matt stands to make some good commission percent on. Before housing bubble economy in Europe, which would have been in the thousands, I said that to be honest I would not be surprised if something underhanded was going on. If he was their estate agent, I would not trust him with a coffee order, let alone a house. The woman then asked me some more in-depth questions about the situation, to which I did explain to her I feel uncomfortable about, but I do want revenge on this scumbag. Turns out her husband is also ex-services, and can now understand why her husband did not like him either. I tell her everything that went on. Few days went past and I see Matt walking down the street past my cafe. I think nothing of it, but then notice throughout the day he did not come back to his office. Oh well, he must be on holiday or something. Turns out this lady complained about him to the firm, and he quit before he would have been fired. I later heard that he made next to nothing, as it was a commission-based job, and that the woman had told all of her friends not to use this guy or the company anymore. The company was told nothing about my situation with Matt, but about how Matt represented the company in such a bad way, with how he talks to people, that the company had to let him go, or the woman would take her business elsewhere. Justice is served. The second story is, demand proof of illness? Hope you have eye bleach. I had a boss one time who was such a control freak that she demanded to know specifically why I was calling out sick. Wildly illegal where I live, one day. And for reference, I'm typically the guy who never gets sick, so it wasn't an attendance issue. I told her I think I had food poisoning. Turned out to be true, and actually wrote a ULPT based off this story a while back. And she kept pressing me as to explain what my symptoms were, and why I couldn't make it in all via text. I had finally had enough and was like, look, I'm not physically capable of working today, and you're not allowed to ask me personal questions about illness and medical history. She threatened me with a write-up if I couldn't specifically explain or prove why I couldn't make it into work. This is where the ProRevenge comes in. I was about to send her something horrific that she could not unsee, and she wouldn't be able to do jack SH about it, since she technically asked for it. Being that I was living in the bathroom for more than 2 days, this inquiry was day 1, and had aggressive diarrhea every 15 to 30 minutes, and the worst abdominal pain I've ever experienced, I lost my SH, har har, and took a pretty disturbing picture of me painting the bowl brown right before I flushed, and sent it to her. No joke, it looked like I power washed the inside of the toilet with feces, and built a turd island in the middle of the water. It honestly looked like a poop volcano had erupted. I had no idea your bowels could contain so much. This is happening every 15 to 30 minutes, and I haven't been able to leave the bathroom for the last 6 hours. Here's your proof, check the timestamp. Also sent a screen of the timestamp. I'll let you know as soon as I can if I'll be in tomorrow. So after 3 days off, I show up for my shift, sleep deprived and sore from sleeping in my bathtub or on the floor for 2.5 days. A-hole not having any of it, but I was finally through the worst. She immediately escorts me into her office where our regional HR rep is waiting for me, and we all sit down. He has paperwork in front of him and is discussing the incident with me and gets me to acknowledge what I did and that sending unprovoked and offensive content to coworkers constitutes harassment and blah 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 right before he asks me to sign a final write-up. If you do something like this again, you're fired. Before signing, I asked him, did she tell you why I sent this? He was dumbfounded and said this isn't really excusable and basically handed me a screenshot printout of the text messages where this bee deleted everything in the exchange, in her phone, but me saying, sorry, but I need to take a sick day today, and the picture. I laughed and handed him my phone and said here's the full exchange. He asked me to leave and give them a few minutes. About 10 minutes later, he calls me in, by myself, and explained what I already knew, that she was the harasser and that she had aggressively violated privacy laws and would be dealt with, and to call him if anything like this ever happens again. I found out from one of the assistant managers that she ended up getting a final written notice and was super close to being fired, and it prevented her from getting a big promotion that she was being looked at for. So if you ever come across a D-head boss who wants to play doctor and question your sick leave, send them diarrhea pics, and they'll either STF you or give you lawsuit material. Thank you for the likes and subscribing. Have a good day.